I think we're getting to my favorite part, because this is the turning point of the journey of the soul. It's the turning point of the individual expressions of God, because a tree, a rock, a blade of grass, a leaf is just an individuation of God. The third, spiritual maturity, we could say, where consciousness awakens to itself and begins to ask, who am I? The third, spiritual maturity, the birth of self-awareness, the sacred struggle of choice. A tree isn't choosing. A rock isn't choosing. Birds aren't choosing. Lions aren't choosing. Water isn't choosing. Earth isn't choosing. Air isn't choosing. Fire isn't choosing. And to explain a bit more of why birds aren't choosing is that they're born into an ecosystem that is already established, already complete. A bird isn't going to choose to say that I'm not going to live in a tree, I'm just going to live underneath the ground. It's not going to do that. So they exist as an entire ecosystem. So they don't necessarily choose, in the same way that a lion isn't going to stop one day and say that I'm going to go and eat a hyena or eat another lion. It's not really going to do that. So in that sense, it doesn't choose. Having rested in being, the first lesson of spiritual maturity, and then learn to feel, respond, and grow through instinct and desire. The second level of spiritual maturity, the soul reaches a sacred threshold, the awareness of self. This is the realm of third spiritual maturity, the density of mind, identity, moral choice, and transformation through reflection. Here the soul begins to look inward, not just outward. A tree is stretching out toward the sun. It's not stretching out within the life force within it. The same for all expressions of God at that level of maturity. Here the soul begins to look inward, not just outward. It says, I am, I want, I fear, I love, I choose. This stage includes the human experience as we know it, as we exist as human beings today. You can either choose to live in the natural world, or you can choose to live in the unnatural world. You can choose to be one with nature, eat the food that is being provided to you, the fruits, even the animals, the vegetables, the water, quite literally everything. Or you can choose this parasitic world, essentially, because all the things that are being sold to us, all the things of this world essentially are quite parasitic, and they're mostly parasitic on us, because you can't eat money. The food that we eat are natural food. The water that we drink is given for free. The air that we breathe is for free. If they could sell air, they probably would sell air. So it's quite a selfish world, where it defies instinct. It's not instinctual. It's I think everyone can tell that something is wrong, something is off about this system. But We are pressured, we are put into corner, we are apparently in an ecosystem where you were born, you have to go to school, you have to work, but instinctually, you can tell that something is wrong. And the beautiful thing is that is inbuilt. That is not something that you were doing, fortunately. This stage includes the human experience as we know it. This is an arena of the heart and mind, where spiritual evolution accelerates through power and weight and free will. The third spiritual maturity is the school of self-awareness, individual identity, ethical choice, separation and union. It is where we learn that we are not just bodies, not just sensations, not just habits. We are souls, navigating a complex world of thought, culture, love, and power. And with that knowledge comes the great responsibility of choice, because we live in an inherently immoral world. And it's instinctual. We can actually feel that, there's something wrong with these systems. They aren't built for me, they aren't built for you, they aren't built for them, they aren't built for anyone. And it's inherently immoral that, we've come up with a word to, kind of fight against morality. We call it ethical, because, from that point of view, we can say that the world is ethical. But, ethics are natural. Most ethical things are to suit systems and laws and, regulations that are natural. They seek to sustain and to preserve this unnatural parasitic world. And with the knowledge, and with that knowledge comes the great responsibility of choice. The core spiritual lessons of third maturity, self-reflection. We become aware of our own thoughts, feelings, actions. The mirror of the mind begins to show us the inner world. This invites both pride and humility, confusion and wisdom, polarity and moral choice. At this level, the soul is called to choose a path: service to others or service to self, selflessness, or selfishness. This is the foundation of spiritual gravity. What is called the law of responsibility, that we are responsible for our own choices. The law of responsibility arises the moment consciousness, me and you, our soul, what spirit has animated, what God has, willed, becomes aware of itself. It is woven into the fabric of the universe, not as punishment, but as a sacred invitation. With awareness comes the power to choose, and with choice comes responsibility. Because we can choose. We can choose to choose this parasitic world and to feed cycles and systems that don't benefit us. That's what we call power, that power of choice. In the same way that we can choose to vote for a particular political party, we have that power within ourselves, but we're responsible for that choice. And the third, spiritual maturity, when the soul awakens to the identity I am, it also begins to affect others, to create, to influence, to love, to harm. At this stage, the Creator entrusts the soul with free will, and with that, consequence of choice. Every thought, every word, every deed becomes part of the tapestry we weave into the world and into ourselves. This law teaches that what you know, you are responsible for. What you choose, you become. What you create, you must honor, heal, and redeem. It is not about guilt. It is not about it is about alignment with the sacred. The sacred in all. The sacred in the trees, and the turtles, and in the animals. In the animals, in the air, the sacred in all of that. Not just, being in a world, and just, living in the world without any kind of choice or without any kind of conscious evolution of spirit or the soul. It's your responsibility to know that. And hence I'm here recording all these videos. It is not about guilt, it is about alignment with the sacred. The more light you carry, the more careful it must be to use. I spoke of a story of a monk, a young monk. He was deep in meditation. They were playing a violin. I think it was a beautiful moment for him. And because we are light, because we are God, there comes that responsibility and that power. So it was about to rain, and it started to drizzle on him, but he didn't want that bliss and that happiness to stop. So he chose to stop the rain, which is within the powers that we have. And an older, wise monk, stopped him and disciplined him and told him that we need that rain. We needed that rain for months. And, that child stopped the rain at the detriment of his village, and subsequently has to take responsibility for his choice, responsibility for the fact that he chose to choose selfishness rather to choose other, unknowingly, unconsciously. I'm going to repeat this again. It is not about guilt. It's about alignment with the sacred. The more light you carry, the more careful you must be, when you use it. To turn away from the law is to decay growth. To embrace it is to step into co-creation with God, with the infinite, with the one. Thus, the law of responsibility is the sacred guardian of wisdom. It ensures that power flows only to those who are willing to wield it with love, humility, and awareness. So, I live in a life that most people, can't comprehend. I can do things that most people can't understand. When I speak of a monk, being one with the rain, I understand precisely what they mean. And out-of-body experience, being able to fly in the sky, being able to enter dimensions that are, aren't everyday things, to be at one with the wind, to have the wind speak to you, the birds chirping, birds confirm, all kinds of really, we could say, powerful things. And I don't use that to gratify myself. I don't use that to make myself bigger. I use that as an experience that I'm having with God, that I may come here and share my story with you. What you choose, you become, which is the most important thing. Love and separation, the pain of being alone, awakens the longing of connection. Relationships become sacred laboratories of growth. Love, loss, and longing become spiritual teachers. Suffering as awakening. Unlike second maturity, pain here becomes internal. Mental, emotional, and existential suffering initiates the search for truth. It is through wounds that light begins to enter. We are so protected and self-knowing. I know myself, I have an ID number. I've got parents, I went to school, I have a degree, I have a job, I earn money. I'm really well insulated and protected against everything. I can sit here with this tree can't do anything. I can sit here with the birds can't do anything. So in our suffering and in our pain, that's where God can enter most. I sit here, not as somebody who's completely, healed and whole and, trying to heal himself and like all those kinds of things. I'm not in a rush to heal because I know that is the entry point of God. That is the entry point of the infinite. That is the entry point of the one. I wouldn't know the magic of the world or the magic of God if I was entirely healed. I would still be in my prideful state. I would lack humility. I would lack kindness. Those lessons of love I would lack. So I'm not in a state of being in a hurry to heal or finding healing or finding really good healers and all those kinds of things. I'm not in that hurry because there's the knowing that is where the entry point of God is. As much as that sucks. Identity and illusion. We try on roles, beliefs, and masks. But the soul slowly learns, I am not my story. I am the light behind it. This leads to the beginning of spiritual remembrance. Symbolic images of the third spiritual maturity. A young traveler at a crossroad, map in hand, unsure which path leads to truth. A mirror in a quiet room where the soul gazes into its own depth. A child reaching out to forgive, to understand, to reunite. A flame in the heart that won't go out. Even in darkness, it seeks the Creator. Third spiritual maturity in you, in me, in all of us. You are here now. This is your current spiritual classroom. When you wrestle with right and wrong, when you reflect on your choices, when you seek love, truth, and purpose, when you long for something more real than what the world shows, you are walking the path of third spiritual maturity. This is the great turning, the place where the soul either begins its long return to God through love, surrender, and wisdom, or becomes lost in illusion, for a time forgetting its divine origins. But the Creator never forgets you. To awaken, to choose, to love through pain. This is the sacred work of the third spiritual maturity.